Hello and welcome to this Elsewhen webinar inside the Agentic Enterprise. I'm your host, Elliot Levy. I run the content here at Elsewhen. We're an AI consultancy, and I'm joined by Leon Gauhman, one of the founders, who's going to talk you through his latest talk, which he gave last month at the AI Summit. Like I say, inside the Agentic Enterprise. Without further ado, over to you, Leon.
Thank you, Elliot. Great to be here. Thank you, everyone who joined. And yeah, let's jump inside the Agentic Enterprise. So, quick intro for those who don't know me. My name is Leon. I'm the co-founder and chief product and strategy officer at Elsewhen. You can find me on LinkedIn and X. And at Elsewhen, we run your most expensive operations for a third of the cost with custom AI. And yeah, to kick us off, I want to remind everyone how fast this technology, the large language models, transformer-based large language models, have been diffusing. This is the fastest we've ever seen technology being taken up. And what's incredible for me as a technologist is that for the first time, executives, CFOs, CEOs are interested in actually pushing hard for this technology to be implemented in their organizations. We've never seen that before. With cloud, with mobile, we always had to pretty much shove it down their throats. So this is a very unique moment in time, I think. And the good news is that we all have this magic box. And the real question is, how should you use the magic box? And there's lots of them. So it's not a piece of technology that belongs to one organization and locked in ivory tower. There's a lot of these models. And what you see here is just logos of the most kind of, blue chip ones. There's a lot more than those. And they are, by large opinion, are becoming a commodity. So what you see here is a distribution of releases of major large language models. You can see the frontier labs and how fast they release and catch up to each other. And you can see also the open weight and open source models very quickly following suit. So the advantage on the technology level is very quickly closed by competitors. So much that even Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, recently said that we see a future where intelligence is a utility like electricity or water, and people buy it from us on the meter. So what more do you need if Sam Altman pre-IPO positions his product like that? And the key area targeted right now by OpenAI and Claude is enterprise business. So Claude and Anthropic felt like they always targeted enterprise. And OpenAI made a major shift this year into enterprise. They killed Sora, and they started to really tackling the enterprise space. And Codex is a great model for knowledge work, and they just recently released a new model that is very cost effective. And also X very recently released their model that is very cost effective at an Opus level for knowledge work. And the expectation is that most of the tokens consumed are going to be consumed in enterprise space. These frontier labs are taking this opportunity so seriously that they've set up their own a consultancy arm to be able to take advantage of this. Anthropic, with a joint venture with Blackstone, OpenAI raised money for its deployment company, and they're really targeting on helping enterprises to take advantage of this technology. Excuse me. So what is the total addressable market of enterprise OPEX, the operational cost of an enterprise? McKinsey tried to put a number on it, between 6 to 7 trillion per year, with it rising to 15 to 22 trillion by 2040. So the opportunity here is enormous. It's an enormous market. Recently, we learned that chat is a terrible UX. So that's another trend that we've been seeing. Kudos for Microsoft of jumping ahead of everybody else and adding Copilot to their productivity software. But we understand today that slapping a chat interface on existing software is not how this technology is going to be implemented successfully. We also more recently learned that token maxing is a terrible idea. So putting tokens all over your organization and hoping for the best, in retrospect, is not a good idea. Here's a organization that, according to Polymarket, spent $500 million in a single month in token usage. Uber recently said that they are spending their entire yearly budget in the first few months. So there's a rethink of how you should be utilizing the token spent in your organization. What's interesting that it's not because tokens are getting more expensive, it's the other way around. Token prices are actually collapsing. So token spend is an AI scalability problem. It's not a model problem. You need to think about boring stuff like context quality, model routing, harness design, how to measure things. And what's clear is that according to popular opinion, which I'm part of, this technology works. So if enterprises don't figure out how to take advantage of it and utilize it effectively, the startup ecosystem will. And this is Paul Graham pretty much saying that. He's one of the co-founders of Y Combinator. The technology works. Enterprises have to figure it out or they're going to be unpinned. So I want to talk a little bit about what an agent is and really kind of set a agreement on that term. There's a lot of confusion going around, and I just want to try and resolve it for the purpose of this webinar. And I'm going to be using OpenClaw, which is an open source personal assistant that runs on your machine. It's a very clean implementation of agent. It's kind of genius in its simplicity. And when you look in retrospect, you go, well, obviously that's how it works. And a lot of genius things are like that. It's just very clear in retrospect. Peter Steinberg, who created OpenClaw, has now been hired by OpenAI, and I expect a lot of his ideas are going to surface in the product. What's interesting as well, that OpenClaw has been in its entirety written by an agent, by an engineering agent. Peter Steinberg famously does not even check the PRs that go into his code base. This is the fastest growing open source project of all time. On GitHub, you can see the amount of stars that this project received. GitHub, for those who don't know, is a repository for code on the web. This is faster growth that we've ever seen with any other open source project. So what is an agent? An agent is a large language model that doesn't just chat with you, but it can act in the real world on your behalf. It has the brain, which is the large language model. It uses tools like the browser, APIs, and CLI that we're going to discuss a little bit later. It has memory, so it persists between sessions. And it has a loop, so it works while you're not even talking to it. And essentially, it's just a bunch of Node.js scripts, so a bunch of JavaScript files. And this is how it operates. If we use OpenClaw as an example, it observes. So OpenClaw checks your messages, tasks, calendars, and files. It's a personal assistant, right? It reasons, what should I do next to achieve my goals? It can then plan and break down complex tasks into steps. It can act, so it can actually use tools like the browser and API. It has a memory, so it can save what happened. And it repeats, so it has a heartbeat that runs and repeats, essentially a loop, or when you message it and interact with it. And I want to talk about the CLI, the command line interface, because it has a lot of connection to everything that we talk through in this presentation. A CLI, for those who don't know, it controls everything on your computer or server. So it's text-based. It's the way we used to interact with computers previously. So if you're a nerd or an engineer, you know about this very, very well and use it daily. And if not, maybe once you launched it and kind of looked at it and it confused you, but it exists on every computer. And because it's text-based, you essentially typed commands to operate any capability your computer has. It's such a great fit for large language models who also utilize language to talk. And increasingly, every piece of software online or on your computer, so for example, Gmail, builds CLI as an interface for agents. So I want to talk a little bit about work in enterprise context. Work in enterprise is just an algorithm. It's a series of steps to accomplish a goal. Usually, for example, a workflow is just a series of steps. And a company is a collection of algorithms. And if you think about it like that, it really changes the context of how you view large language models. So, for example, if we look at a process in an enterprise, and this is from a client of ours, obviously it's all anonymized, a lot of enterprise processes look like this. This is not unique. This is how most of our proposals look like. So you have a series of steps executed across different agents, different actors within the organization, and they utilize different tools, and that's very fragmented, it's very manual, and it's slow. It takes about 2 weeks in this example. What we do when we introduce agents is that we shift everything to the left, and essentially the same process starts to look like that. Human roles shift to the left. It becomes a role of verifying, not executing. And because we're utilizing agents, we can run in parallel to increase productivity. So everything becomes automated, parallelized, and we remove all the manual handoffs. So we can really speed up things, for example, from 2 weeks to 2 hours. And when you rethink work, these kind of workflows, we kind of think about it in increased complexity of use. So essentially, how you utilize large language models like Claude, or Codex, ChatGPT, or Claude Chat in your organization. So first, in most instances, somebody starts with a chatbot. So they put some prompts in, they receive a response. It's kind of very depending on your input, and you gain some productivity. We all experience that, and that's why we utilize these chatbots. Then you might think to move to the next stage and use a coding agent for knowledge work. So, for example, a Claude Code or Codex, or if you use Cowork, it's essentially a wrapper around the same capability. And then we can automate some processes. We can actually use and kind of remove a few steps from our own work and delegate it to the large language model. And then maybe next steps, we look at entirely workflows personally, or even within our team to speed up things. So we kind of move to the next level. And where we really want to get to, and when really a lot of productivity comes in and enhances capability in this idea of agentic enterprise. So loads of workforce and loads of processes that are coordinated across the organization, across business units, and across different processes. And we really need to redesign work to take advantage of that. Not just repeat the same processes we're doing right now, but really think how we should redesign them. And last time we had to do that is when we moved from steam engines to electricity. And what happened initially is that we introduced the dynamo into the factories. And the dynamo essentially replaced one for one the steam engine, and nothing changed. And it did not deliver a lot of productivity. But when we actually started to use the technology and think about it, we understood that, well, electricity can run on very thin cables. So you can run it around the factory floor as needed. And you can put individual motors on workstations. So you can do a specific job at a specific workstation. And when we started to redesign our factories to look like that and to take a real advantage and understanding of the technology, we gain the manufacturing productivity we see up today in our factories. A similar job needs to be done in every organization with the large language model and its capability. Another thing I want to remind everybody that using a large language model should not marry you to a single company because it's a commodity. So for example, if you use the GitHub Copilot, the pricing recently changed and you will see a very different invoice this month than you did in May. I also want to talk about software as a service because this has been the big pattern in the last decade, and we think this is just not going to work this time. Pre-built, one-size-fits-all solutions miss the entire point of how this technology should be diffused. If previously, when we were diffusing essentially the database, the right solution was to build a little bit of UI around it and create a use case that is generalized across a lot of companies. In this case, it's not going to work. And the market agrees with me. About 1.2 trillion has been wiped out from SaaS valuations on the markets. A few companies have clawed back some of it, but in general, there's a very bearish view on SaaS as a business model. So much as even Mark Benioff himself, the great wizard of SaaS, the CEO of Salesforce, the founder and CEO of Salesforce, recently repositioned Salesforce. It's essentially becoming a database that is accessible to agents, which I find is incredible. He's trying to save the company in this new era by convincing enterprises that the data that he holds, his data, is important enough to participate in this new paradigm. It's actually your data, and maybe some companies decide otherwise, but we'll see how this plays out. Because this is too strategically important for you not to own. When an operating model itself becomes software, are you going to rent it for someone else? So for example, Kirkland and Ellis going to spend $500 million in building their own AI technology. This is a law firm. This is a law firm that decided that having a competitive advantage in being able to implement their knowledge, their company brain essentially, into AI is where the future is. And at this time, when the cost of writing software is tanking, you don't need $500 million. This is a completely new era when we can deliver software at a much cheaper cost for enterprises. And we can see this already. So in the past year, there was an explosion of coding productivity because writing software is no longer the barrier. A lot of these apps and websites probably completely useless. They will never find product market fit, but getting them out there and building them is not the moat anymore. I love this quote from Patrick, the CEO of Stripe, saying, software should be like pizza, cooked right then and there at the moment of use. You don't want mass-produced industrial scale software. You want bespoke custom software made for you at this moment. And Stripe, by the latest data, or last data they released, sent over 1,300 pull requests completely autonomously into their code base. So we, at the enterprise scale, need to invest in creating the glue that connects models, knowledge, workflows, and people. Today, most enterprises look like this. They have some systems of register, some SaaS software that is unique for their segment, maybe an ERP, maybe a CRM, maybe a core banking platform. And the glue, essentially, this area that supports the company are humans, and they use spreadsheets, emails, calls, they rekey a lot of data, and the context of the company knowledge since in PDFs and some sister register, and a lot of it is in people's brains. And the agentic enterprise looks a little bit more like this. First of all, you have your vision or strategy or the operating model of the company, kind of sets the course. Then you need to create your own unique harness and capability around the foundational model, around the large language model, whatever it might be, Gemini, Claude, whatever. You need to create a context, so kind of layer of bringing all the data into your organization to one space and make it accessible to agents. And also you need to create an experience on top of it. So based how people are going to be approaching and engaging with the system. And obviously we need security and governance to make sure that we're doing things safely. And one of the key shifts that I would like to communicate in this webinar is that we're moving from an operational model to one that is essentially code. From static documents to a piece of code. And because it's code, it inherits the properties of code. You can version it, diff it, test it, roll it, back and forth it. It's very malleable, it's very forgettable, you can control Z things, you can release different versions of things. And then governance in your organization stops being a policy PDF, it becomes a piece of code. It becomes the runtime constraint, the action space the agents are allowed to operate in. The operating model becomes a deployable, composable asset rather than just a deck hidden somewhere in your SharePoint or Drive. And I'm going to go in a little bit deeper of how things look. So if we think about this large language model, this magic box, I just want to be very clear. It's something that runs on your cloud infrastructure, potentially on-prem, but in most cases on cloud infrastructure. And you can, again, it's a commodity, and you can pull it through Microsoft Azure, AWS, Google Cloud. And then on top, you need to build this loop, the abstraction layer around this large language model that is right for your own specific enterprise. Running agents at scale is kind of its own problem. When we move from a chatbot on our computer that we download and then use it and think about how to run this at scale that really gets operational results, it requires additional work. Same as with cloud computing, moving from one server to many servers that can scale up, provision, observe. You need to be able to create new ones very easily. Essentially, this idea of cloud agent infrastructure is something you need to think about. A lot of talk is being made about harness, and this is kind of a piece of terminology that's really caught. And the idea is kind of you need to build a specific harness around the large language model that allows you to take advantage of it in the same way as you create a harness around the horse, which is raw power, to plow a field. It's a very tactical solution. And there's different options and protocols, but I thought it was important to mention this. The other piece that is important is this ontology and context design. So to make data meaningful, accessible to agents, you have to understand it. You need to structure and agree on the language in your data. You need to basically decide on how things are called, so the model doesn't have to guess. So you don't have to token max your entire context every single time. It's not just an architecture problem, it's also a cost problem that you need to solve. And this needs to be explicitly designed. And designing that and building that, this really becomes your moat, this kind of company brain that you're creating. And I want to try to explain this a little bit with an example. So let's pick a kind of a random enterprise, and potentially it has these kind of 3 business units and kind of areas in the business, and might have a CRM, and within the CRM it has an entity called client. Maybe it has a core banking platform or an ERP, and within that it's called account holder. And in marketing, for example, maybe they use HubSpot, or they talk about this idea of a customer. Nobody's quite sure what they're talking about and if it's the same thing. So what we do when we build the context is we hammer this in code. We essentially make sure that this is understood, agreed on, and then captured in code. So the system maps its data to the shared business concept. Another piece that we need to think about is how you surface the experience, because we want something that is highly personalized, highly and tightly fit for your business. It becomes a very efficient experience. We want something that is very fast to prototype, easy to adapt, and allows us to gain accessibility and much better task completion. So essentially, you need to define this glue for your organization to implement agent at scale, because you want to go from a general purpose AI model to a reliable worker. You want it to be connected to your systems, know your data and tools, know your business, and how your team actually operates and works. You want it to follow your process, take the right steps every single time, and check its own work, know that it's accurate and can be trusted. And essentially, this glue that you need to create turns general AI model into your own personal worker. So how far do you go with autonomy within your business? There's a few, kind of three main models. One is a deterministic path. So you essentially have the agent execute the blueprint. It always does similar steps every single time. There is no kind of opening for any kind of changes. And for a lot of tasks, this is exactly what you want. Just very streamlined automation. Some tasks, you want it to be autonomous. You want it to make decisions and use its judgment or interpreted data. But you still want a human in there to make sure that the decisions was correct, and to verify, to apply kind of, it's our experience at the job to make sure that the model is doing the right thing. And there's things that should be completely fully autonomous. So for example, you see that with OpenClaw, or if you write code with dangerously skip permissions on. And an agentic enterprise is a combination of all three. So you need to decide which workflows are going to be executed how. So I want to talk a little bit about what is the roles of humans in this. The role of humans would be determining what problems to solve, apply the taste, experience, etc., inventing new products and services, and essentially optimizing all of these workflows from above. And one of the things I think we don't understand very well right now is that humans are actually the finite resource in all of this, not the code that we can write at such pace, speed, and quantity. Humans are becoming the long pole in the tent. It's kind of hard to think about this now, but when things really start to automate, when more and more software will be written at a huge scale, and this productivity kind of increase is we're gonna see its effects, we will need to do a lot of work to decide where to deploy our most precious resource, which is humans, which are not scaling at all. If we think about today, in most Western countries, we are at what economists call full employment. So 4-5% unemployment is the market that has full employment. And I want to talk about Jevons paradox, which is related to this. It's been coined by William Stanley in his book, The Call Question. And he essentially said that increasing resource efficiency due to technological progress leads to lower costs, which in turn dramatically expands demand. So the idea that we will see playing here with AI and automation, we've seen already with coal and steam engines. What most people predicted when steam engines became less resource hungry and more efficient is that we're going to have less of them. But what happened is the complete opposite of it. We just automated more and more things because it became cheaper to do so. So entrepreneurs and factory owners just bought more and more steam engines and automated away things at a faster pace. And that's kind of the paradox of this cost dropping. We expect it to be used less, but it's actually more. And we already see this in software engineering, which is arguably a kind of knowledge work that has the most penetration and the highest product market fit. Increasing coding efficiency actually expands demand for engineers, not the other way around. And if you think about it, even if all the software in the world is going to be completely wipe coded, which it's not, someone will need to understand what it is and maintain it. Similarly will happen to all knowledge work. We don't see in the data, in the market right now, any kind of reduction in demand for workers. Apollo recently released a paper on that they see zero evidence of AI-related job losses. RAMP just released last week or 2 weeks ago on FT, again, that they see companies that implement AI hiring more, not less. And for example, call center, which is another area where there's a very strong product market fit for AI. We don't see call center jobs dropping. It's actually going upwards. People want to hire more staff, not less, even if they automate some of the most repeated and easiest tasks, because everybody's striving to get a high score from their customers. And to kind of summarize this section of the presentation, I just want to say that we're very early into all of this, and I love this infographic, so I wanted to share it. Here, every single dot you see is 3.2 million people, is essentially the entire population of our planet. And the red dot are people that are actively using coding agents. Yellow are dots for people that are paying for AI. Green are all the free AI tier users, and the gray are the rest who are not using AI at all. And when we are so deep in this, it's sometimes hard to remember how actually early we are in the conversation, despite that things are diffusing so fast. Okay, so now that we raised some of the problems that we see in executing AI at scale and getting to agentic enterprise, I just want to talk a little bit about how Elsewhen solves some of these problems. How do we solve the glue? And I'm going to talk about not a SaaS solution, but the set of components that we use to accelerate delivery and help enterprises build their own kind of layer around the foundational model. And there's 5 key components. Excuse me. Business context, headless agents, orchestrator, skills factory, and generative UI. And I'll go through all of those. I will also use kind of a very simple example to try and explain in a more concrete sense. And to do that, I will use a kind of this fairly familiar idea of know your customer, or a customer onboarding. So a financial institution, any kind of regulated entity, when they need to onboard a customer, they need to understand who they are. It's a process called know your customer. It's done a lot of times by hand. Yes, there is some software that supports it, but it's still a very tedious and monotonous process, especially if it's not a consumer but a business, and a lot of stuff can go wrong and it's expensive. But I just wanted to use any kind of example. We're not necessarily specializing in that. It's just a great way to explain what the platform is about. So at the large scale, kind of if we zoom out, this is what everything looks when it's hooked up together. So you have the business context, you have the large language model, this magic box, which is a commodity, orchestrator, headless agent, skills factor, and we'll go through everything, okay? So let's start and zoom in first onto the business context. It's a structured model of how your organization operates. It's monitors and kept up to date by agents, so it connects to all your systems, your CRM or ERP or whatever you have in your organization. It also can ingest not structured data, which was previously impossible. And it also starts to create, as it's being used, this internal decision context of your company. This is essentially the brain. And we also utilize agents to keep it up to date. It can embed rules and governance and entity relationship, and it creates this constant state and traceability, which is very important to keep monitoring decisions in enterprise. So if we use our KYC onboarding practice, it would include applicant context, legal entities, directors, key KYC policy and risk tiers and rules, and can track all the state changes to document evidence, decisions, essentially creating an audit trail. And business context unlocks data to become more valuable in a previously unimaginable ways. Then we have the headless agents. AI agents that were on workflows or combination of workflows, kind of the open clause, these singular entities. They act as a digital worker embedded inside your organization. They can execute tasks autonomously, like we talked about the CLI or the API. They use skills. They understand the business context. They can trigger actions or other workflows as needed, and they keep humans in the loop when it matters. And like we said, they have memory and all that stuff. So in our KYC practice, maybe we have a document intake agent that pulls passports and certificates of incorporation. Maybe we have an identity verification agent that runs checks and matches IDs. Maybe a sanctions and PEP agent that checks every party against the UN, other sanctions list. A risk scoring agent. This is really about kind of thinking, how do you break down your previous workflow into agents? And they allow you to automate high volume work to reduce costs and increase throughput and remove bottlenecks, as we saw in our kind of process workflow diagrams. Then we have orchestrator, which is very important when you start to use agents at scale. They coordinate, essentially the layer that coordinates agents. So it makes sure that all these agents work together across complex workflows. It can route tasks to the right agents, creates multi-step workflows, it shares the context between agents, handles approvers, escalations, can track state memory and outcomes, monitors performance, and optimize the agents over time. So in our KYC practice, in our KYC onboarding example, for example, we can create and orchestrate intake, verification, and screening, and rescoring, and pass the context between agents. We can stop a workflow if the sanctions are hit. We can track our SLA, escalate stalls, retry failures, and maintain a single audit log of all agent actions and human decisions. This allows the orchestrator to scale AI safely across the enterprise with control, visibility, and governance in mind. And this is when you think about kind of large-scale cross steps, workflows, you really need something to orchestrate them. Then we have the skills factory. This might sound familiar if you're using Claude. It empowers your employees to guide the agents. So anyone can teach an agent of how work gets done. We can essentially create these files in natural language, this NMD file, and you just write it like you would a prompt, describing the task in the way, just natural language, how you would explain it to a colleague. And we can capture that expertise and then reuse it across all the different teams. That allows us to set rules, guardrails, decision criteria, and essentially continuously improve these skills as work evolves. And the result is that your organization can build this growing library of operational intelligence. And to update and change them, you don't need an engineer. So the SME can constantly input this into the agents. So if we use our KYC onboarding practice, KYC onboarding example, a compliance officer can define a skill for enhanced due diligence on politically exposed persons. A headless agent applies this skill when a PEP is flagged without engineering any changes. Updates to the central skill propagate across all the cases instantly when the regulations shift. So you essentially change one file and all your agents are changing their behavior. And everyone in the business using skills can take advantage of technology without being an AI expert. Finally, we have the generative UI. And this what creates the interfaces, dashboards, and experiences from large language models essentially on the fly. So we can embed UI into the workflow, represent exactly how a job needs to be done at exact moment of need, can make it available immediately across different surfaces. These are components that are themselves built by LLMs, and we can encapsulate them within your component system and within your design library. In practice, you can imagine a case officer using dynamically generated applicant UI with only the necessary fields. And then a compact summary card is generated by the LLM. So the interface evolves with this case escalation, adding evidence, requests, comments, and approval workflow. Essentially, the interface changes as needed, non-deterministically. So the firm's existing components library and design system are used and assembled uniquely for each case. This will drive adoption by embedding AI directly into how people already work and not just slap a bunch of chat interfaces all over the place. So KYC was used as just a basic example. The platform allows you to reinvent any workflow. The result is essentially your IP, your own operational model, expressed as code. And these components that I introduced come from patterns we see repeatedly in real work. And we essentially distill them into this practical platform that accelerates your own AI transformation. We also have a roadmap to embed these accelerators into your organization. So across map, build, scale, and evolve, first we activate the AI and we take a thin slice, thin use case to be able to deliver value as fast as possible and prove that we can do this together in our enterprise. And once we do that, we then build up the components as needed and essentially moving into this AI integration phase. So further kind of investment and hardening of the components so we could start and industrialize and onboard more workflows and use cases one after another, essentially getting us to this final stage, which is the agentic enterprise. So at Elsewhen, we use forward deployed engineers. So our team comes in with the platform and execute it for you in your organization, creating your own custom AI solution in your own IP. Our team themselves use agentic engineering, a software delivery lifecycle platform. So we write code with agents. So about 80% is written by agents, and 20% is done to align and amend by our own engineers. So we can move really, really fast as building on top of these accelerators. We work with you to understand your context and essentially build custom AI. And we're so confident that we can deliver value that we can come in for 4 weeks and fund an engagement with you where we will align on the use case, generate kind of a specific technology alignment for your organization, validate, and then ship a use case. And Elsewhen is happy to fund this for client, taking the risk entirely in how we allow an organization to take advantage of this technology. So if you want to move from pilots to proven value in weeks, please book a working session with us or get in touch with me directly. We would love to come in and help you do this. Thank you very much. That's all I have for today.
Thanks, Leon. There is so much good stuff in there. And if anyone wants to read more, we have a white paper about our productivity platform already online. We also have your talk IRL, so to speak, at the AI Summit, also online if you want to watch that back. But if you have any questions, do reach out to Leon, as he says. We'll be back with more about the Agentic Enterprise soon. Thanks for watching.
Thank you very much.